Hi, welcome to All Things Possible TV. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to share a new topic with you. And I love to be able to help you, give you tips and tools and things to think about differently that could make you more successful in your life, whether that's business or personal, in relationships. It all plays a part. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you haven't joined our community, right here on the screen is allthingspossible.biz. Join us. We have free gifts, as well as you get once a week we put out a new episode and a new blog. So you have the article and the video to watch or to read, to give you different personal development tools, different leadership tools, and communication tools to move you forward. So if you haven't joined us, join us and be part of All Things Possible. So I want to jump in. I want to talk to you about accomplishment mentality. We are all striving to be more successful. It is what is in our nature as human beings. We want to be more successful. Think about it. When we make more money, we spend more money. And when we get to that level, we want to go to the next level. It's just something that's in our DNA, something that's in the human race, is that we want to be more successful. And there is a huge piece that so many people are missing that I teach all the time. And what I'm going to tell you is that this last month I got caught up so much in what was going on that I was not living what I teach like I should. And I got caught right in the middle. And I'm going to tell you that story. And I'm also going to tell you another story where my husband and I did some stuff this last week and had the total opposite effect. So I want to share both of those stories with you, but I want you to think about it. Most people are looking for ways to be more successful. And what could you do immediately to change that and to start having more accomplishment mentality for yourself, and that will make you more successful? So this is a very easy thing. Stick with me, listen to the stories, and see how different it can be for you. So go with me back a couple of weeks. I was having a conversation with my virtual assistant. So she does a lot of work for me, and we have it down to where, I send stuff off on Monday morning and she takes care of things all week, and we touch bases occasionally, and we have, meetings in person once in a while. But she lives not too far from my house, and she has become a dear friend besides not only being my assistant. But in doing this, we were having a conversation, and I had a really busy 3 or 4 weeks. In fact, I can tell you this was less than 30 days, less than 4 weeks' time. And I was kind of going through the whole thing of, we had made it through my mother's surgery. She had a hip replacement, and with my dad passed away, she had nobody to stay with her, so I'd taken her to the hospital, and then it was time to go home from the hospital. I went to her house for several days and nights to help her and get her back on doing what she's supposed to do. She's 77 and a half years old, having a hip replacement, and so that took a lot of my time. I was working from the hospital, I was trying to work from her home, and honestly, I wasn't getting a whole lot done. So I'd not been very successful in getting work accomplished. Yes, I was being very successful in helping my mother, which is near and dear to my heart, and that's what I'm all about. So we kind of talked about that, and then I had this family vacation where even my son and his family from out of state were here, and we were, camping and having this family time, and it was, this 5 days. It was fantastic, and again, that's what I live for, is family time. And then we talked a minute about my son's wedding. So in all of this, we had the surgery. The next week was this Gone with the Family. The next week I had out-of-state company here at my home and this wedding. And the next week I left for a few days away to Lake Powell. So in less than 4 weeks' time, I had really only had maybe 4 business days that I did strictly business and not other things that were going on. And so I really felt like I was behind. I was a bit overwhelmed with everything that was happening. And in this conversation with my virtual assistant, my friend, right? And I'm just like, she's like, so how was it? How was the wedding? And I was telling her how things went, and I was like, yeah, I dropped 26 pounds and fit in my dress, and it was different than anything I thought I would ever do. And she was like, what? Wait, stop. What? And I said, it was different than what I thought it would look like. She goes, no, what did you say before that? And I said, well, I did drop 26 pounds. I released 26 pounds so I could fit in my dress. And that was a big deal. And let me tell you why. Because I've been working on being healthier for a couple of years, well, for longer than that. I've exercised and eaten healthy most of my adult life and had to fight to stay fit and trim and maybe a smaller size than I would be if I didn't. And I've struggled with a medication change that caused me to gain weight. So for 18 months, almost 2 years, I've had almost no success in releasing weight. And she was like, what? And it had been 3 months, a very strict diet, very strict exercise program, and I just breezed right through it. Just like, oh, yeah, whatever. I released 26 pounds and kept going. And she was like, that's amazing. Like, of anybody, you always talk about accomplishment mentality. You always teach that you need to stay in accomplishment mentality. And even though I had this whole list of things of why I was away, out of town, away from the business, why I had not had total focus on the business, and why I wasn't being successful, the whole time I had that going on, I still had my business. I still had that assistant plus another assistant doing calls and doing things in my business, and I had a lot of stuff happening in my business. And I wasn't acknowledging any of it. I was going into overwhelm, frustration, and discouragement of, look, there's not enough going on, and we need to get more momentum, and I need to find, get booked as a speaker, and knowing that speakers slow down in the summer. People are playing. They're not having as many people come in to speak. And I know this. I know going into it that that's what happens. I've been in the industry long enough to know, kind of watch the signs, and you're always marketing for 6 to 12 months out. So I knew all of this, but I was allowing it to come into my space, because what I had done is I had stopped giving myself accomplishment mentality. I had stopped keeping myself in that. And what I mean by that is when we celebrate our accomplishments, meaning we acknowledge them, we write them down, we write it, celebrate it, and acknowledge it. Those are the 3 things I can tell you over and over and over. Write it, celebrate it, and acknowledge it. Acknowledge what's happening. Because I was having little goals, and I was having some acknowledgement of releasing weight, because I fit into a dress that it was my son's favorite dress. I'd worn it a couple of times on stage, and that's the one he wanted me to wear at the wedding. Well, I hadn't worn it for 4 or 5 years. And he was like, I really want you to wear this dress. And I was like, I really want a new one because I'm the mother to the groom, right? And that's not what was happening. It was exactly their colors, and he's like, that's the dress I want. I want you to wear that dress. And I knew to get into that dress, it was going to take a lot. And yet, as soon as I was in the dress and had gone, I just moved on like nothing had happened. And for me, that milestone of 26 pounds was lower than I had been in 2 years with that medication change. And so it's something that I needed to acknowledge. I needed to write it down. I needed to be able to really celebrate that had happened. Now, I put the dress on and was like, yay, I made it, boop, boop, right? But I didn't stay in that mentality, because as soon as I was there, I was going out into, I've got all this stuff to do and I'm all behind, right? And when you look at almost 4 complete weeks, and I was not in my business as a business owner and working hourly, more than 1 day a week, and maybe not even the full 8 hours of that day. So when you look at it from that perspective and you go, oh my goodness, between May 14th and June 12th, right? Between those dates, all of this stuff happened. We'd had a granddaughter's birthday. We'd had all these things happen. A daughter-in-law's birthday. Like, we had so many things going on that it was incredible. I'd been out of town 10 or 12 of those days. I'd been at my mom's 4 or 5 days and nights, and yet I was owning being behind or being not caught up and overwhelmed, holding on to everything that's happening. So my thing for you is not, like, oh, Kris wasn't living what she teaches. My big message for you today is that accomplishment mentality is huge for success. Because when we live in that accomplishment, when we're valuing what we accomplish, what we do, we see more of what gets done. When we go through our day and we're just like, I'm just a mom, or I'm working really hard and I get nothing else done and I'm way behind, we don't stay in that accomplishment mentality, and so we have less accomplishments. But when you stay in accomplishment mentality, you own it, you speak it, you celebrate, you write it, and acknowledge where you're at and what you've accomplished, you have more success. And it happens every single time. So fast forward with me to this last week. We just get back from our getaway to Lake Powell, where the wedding's over. My mom's doing very good on her own. And our out-of-state company's all left now. And granddaughter's birthday's over, right? So everything's settled. And we live in the mountains. We have 2.5 acres of in the mountains property, so juniper trees. And the fire department comes through once a year now with our community because we can have wildfires. And if we will trim our trees, trim up from the ground up, they will chop them up and leave the bark. Well, we were like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And they haven't done this every year, but for the last few we haven't really done it. And all of our kids are gone. It's just me and my hubby and lots and lots and lots of trees, right? I live in the mountains. And so we really didn't participate in this. And we got back from Lake Powell. It was like, oh, hey, I have a little bit of time. And so Bill started trimming some of the trees. And they were going to be coming the next day. So he piled a little pile out there, and that was that. Well, they didn't get done chopping all the trees in the canyon. And so that next night, he came home and we changed around our schedule and some of our appointments and things we had going on. And we worked together that night and early the next morning trimming trees. Well, we had a pile 40 feet long and 6 feet tall of branches. And I had, cuts and scrapes on my arms and my legs, and I was exhausted, right? And yet, I would watch my husband and myself, and we'd walk by the window and we'd look out and see all these trees trimmed and how much better it looked and how much cleaner it looked, how safe we felt, right? And I lived in that accomplishment mentality. What I can tell you is they came, they chopped up the branches, right? But because we had started that, it was like, oh, hey, this is a little momentum, let's work some more. So we did more yard work. Yesterday we worked in the yard for about 12 hours. And we trimmed more trees, we took all the bark and spread it all over in the flower beds and all these places in our yard. And, last night I'm on my deck and I overlooked the whole Salt Lake Valley, and I'm like looking out before it's quite dark, but I'm overlooking my backyard and the bark that's down and these plants that we planted. And for the most part, my yard mostly comes up and does its thing, and we put it in that way on purpose. But I had not added plants and other things besides what was there. And on Saturday we did. I went and bought some plants on Friday and planted them all Saturday morning. And we even hired a helper to come over and do all of the weed whacking up our whole hill, and it's a lot. So 5 hours later, he had whacked off all the June grass and stuff. Why I'm telling you this is because it looked incredible. It looked so much better. I mean, we actually had a wedding in our yard 3 years ago and had done all this work and haven't had to do major projects since that wedding. So here I was going, wow, look at this. It just looks better, sitting in the hot tub, enjoying the reality that I have in my area. I was acknowledging it, I was noticing it, I was saying it out loud, and I was celebrating it. And I was watching my husband as he's walked past this window. We have this octagon window at the end of our house that overlooks this one big area that he had done so much work on these trees. And it does look so much better. And we have this old machinery. It's a really old antique machine from the farm and stuff that my husband grew up on. And we put new bark down under it, and it just looked so much better. And he's like, oh man, it looks good. And I watched as he lived that accomplishment mentality of like, hey, that was a ton of work. We worked like crazy all week long. But yet, when it came to being complete, every time we look at our yard, we're acknowledging it and we're celebrating it. And it helps us stay in that acknowledgement mentality. So when you can get that way about all the things that you're doing, when you can be acknowledging it as well as celebrating it and really making that difference. This last week, one of the things I do is I write down 3 things that I accomplished that day as accomplishments. It's the best thing that you can do. I do 5 gratitudes every day, so I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for, which when you keep doing that, you have to look harder and harder to be grateful, but that also helps you find the accomplishments. And I was writing down 3 accomplishments a day and going through my ritual of what I do, and it's the way I end my day, that's what I do. And as I did that, and I was like, wow, I have not been acknowledging and celebrating the things like I should. I've allowed that overwhelm and frustration and discouragement to outweigh the success. And what I can tell you is it feels completely different. And so one of the things that I did besides writing it down is to celebrate this 26 pounds. I started trying on clothes I hadn't worn for a while. And really getting in that space of celebrating, because it's like, woohoo, I can wear these. I haven't been able to wear them for a bit. You need to do those things that help you to be better. And one of those that can make you more successful is to continually see what you are accomplishing. So whether that's a vision board, whether that's declarations, however that looks for you, what are you doing to stay in accomplishment mentality? The easiest, fastest way is to first write it down. Second, celebrate it. And third, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it with yourself. Acknowledge it with others. Spread the word. That day, I have no idea why I rambled that off to my virtual assistant. I'm not sure why I told her I had released weight, but when I did and it caught her so by surprise, she's like, you haven't said one thing about this. Like, you're like, yeah, I fit in my dress because I dropped 26 pounds. And my dress looked good. It was an accomplishment I should have been acknowledging better. And what I want you to know is if you want to be more successful, if you want instant success, shift that alone and you will see life differently. You'll start seeing yourself for the things that you are doing, not the things you aren't doing. And when we can love ourselves completely and love us the way we are right now, it's easier to acknowledge what's happening, to see us accomplishing things every day. Because for some people, just getting out of bed is an accomplishment. And when I was working really hard and helping my mother and getting these vacations and everything going on and feeling like I was so behind, when I started to look at what this assistant had done and what this assistant had done, and these were the calls that I needed to make, and all these other things were taken off my plate, I had actually scheduled it so that while these 4 weeks were going to be chaotic and crazy, I had a lot going on in my business. And I had not acknowledged it or even seen it as that because I hadn't stopped long enough to really pay attention. So my advice for you is pay attention, celebrate your accomplishments, write them down, acknowledge them, and celebrate. That's over and over. Write it down, celebrate, and acknowledge. And you will be more successful. Thanks for joining me here on All Things Possible. I love having you with us. I love having you in the community. If you haven't joined, join now at allthingspossible.biz, and also subscribe to us on YouTube and get tips and tools. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time here on All Things Possible TV. Bye-bye.